the city itself was like a self-fulfilling, self-propagating structure. His price to come out there and party on his land and to do all this was both building materials and labor. His building materials could be anything, like people from all over would show up with anything from lumber to pipes to wires to spooling, and he put it all on his New Rome website, you know, the materials people needed to bring and what were in demand. But the big easy thing that everyone brought was cars, because you had to drive out there for one thing, but it would be easy to tow, you know, a couple of scrap vehicles, because at that time there's so many, you know, cars that couldn't afford to have waste cast conversion, so cars were everywhere, so everyone just towed out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars. So a lot of things inside of New Rome were actually made from cars, from these vehicles that, you know, the waste of the living world. They drag cars out there and they'd paint them up with rust-proof paints, and usually in bright colors, and they'd strip everything out of the car that they could use in construction. The chairs inside the vehicles, the seats became furniture, and eventually became the seats of the Colosseum, which was the first there was 2 major structures to begin with, but I'll get into that in a minute. And they'd strip all the wiring out and weave it together to make cable and rope, and it became it sounds like an amazing kind of a work party, but it was there was 2 parts to each seasonal festival. There was the work, what they called the work season, and then the play season, which it started out being like a week and a week, and then it went to 2 weeks and 2 weeks and 3 weeks and then 3 weeks and whatever, you know. It kind of moved on like that till eventually it got to be where, you know, close to 2 months there was, like, you know, the place was only supposedly unoccupied for a month, where Caesar went through and did clean up and things like that. It was but people felt better about working out there. It's almost like the work part of it and the building of the city was almost more popular than the partying end of it. I mean, a lot of these people who came out there to work had never worked with their hands before. I mean, these were all guys from the coating pits, and building onto a city let them see a tangible result, let them see something that they never even knew could be possible come into being. Now, the major areas of construction, of course, was, you know, everyone brought out trailers, and some people left them there, part of the dream, you know. Well, this is a structure now, I brought this trailer out, and as long as I can use it next time I come back, that'll be great, you know. Or they build temporary structures, but they started building the Colosseum, and the Colosseum started as like sort of a central area, a place where they could party, and there was a huge open area, you know, larger than any sports field, that was left to be, you know, just an area to do whatever you wanted, a rave or what have you, and this became known as the New Rome Colosseum. And between that and, of course, for security purposes, there was the wall. I mean, originally, I think the wall started out just being kind of an artistic thing, having this huge wall of cars. Was, you know, there was no guns at that time. It was just a wall of cars. It was like some structure in the middle of nowhere. You know, it was amazing. And in the beginning, he had his laws and rules that he kept, and the people who came out there, this wasn't like you didn't have the gangs that you had today. This was all, it was all out of respect, you know, like Caesar invited people to come out, and as the popularity grew because of the party seasons and all that, he had to make sure that people just didn't show up for the play season and weren't there for the work season. So just like anything else, any other research, he asked for it. He asked for security. He asked for, you know, bouncers from the cities and the megas and whatnot to come out and work there to make sure that, you know, certain people got in. And being as there were so many people that were into technology, there's a whole identification system, and bio-identity came into play, and the whole thing became fairly state-of-the-art. I mean, it was featured in a lot of different magazines. People thought it was amazing. They could go out and, you know, that there was this communal technological world being built. And on the surface, what was in the magazines was the the technology, the communal, and the community, and the, hooray for us kind of a thing that they kind of played off with the war. But the lifeblood of the place was the parties, really. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of work being done, but there's open orgies and drugs and debauchery to a level that was never seen before. I mean, not since Rome. And that drew a lot of people. And there's people who go out and they'll do a lot of stuff to become part of a society like that because they enjoy it. That hedonistic mentality is what called them forward. This grew and grew and grew for years, and the New Rome began to build, and eventually it got sort of angular and circular. They finished up the wall, and it was becoming, quite a thing. It reached its maximum potential without evolving, which so many, just like anything else, any living organism, you'll advance to a point, and you have to either die or evolve. You enhance yourself to move on, which is kind of like where I'm at right now. That's probably why I think that the Dreadman will be able to help me. But just like people, you get to a point where you need to either advance or stop, march or die. And that's what happened with New Rome. You see, they reached a point where they had to have something happen. And it was one festival that these, they called themselves Druids, but they came down from the Northwest, and they were like these, they weren't Druids they were a weird kind of bastardized, what religion's bastardized? All religions are bastardized, but they were this strange cross between, there used to be a race of beings known as the Druids who were in Ireland and in Europe, but these ones were they were like from the Mediterranean and Haiti and Jamaica. They were these Rastafarian Druids. It was, they called themselves Druids, but it was the way they moved. I mean, they had the long dreadlocks, and they came down and they really believed in what they were doing with New Rome. They thought it was ordained by God. They had a lot of these really, really wild ideas. And they came down and they came to party, and they got a hold of Caesar. And they gave him some bogweed. And bogweed is, at that time it was, bogweed is, it's like marijuana or pods or grass or any of those kind of drugs, but it's what they claim, what the Druids claim, was that it was just like people. How do you explain this? See, there was marijuana and grass, and it's all essentially the same thing, but if you understand anything about the drug culture at that time, there was different strains, like different species, like having a flower. You'd have different types of flowers where there was different types of marijuana. And what they claimed was that this particular strain that in their culture and their religion that they bred was the closest to the original form. It was the ancient and sacred herb that they believed was the salvation of man. It was an enhancement to them. They could say, they said that it would take them and enhance them in such a way that they'd be able to see all things and be able to speak with God. Now, the other side of that, aside from the sacred properties used in religion, was that bogweed could be made into cloth, could be made into gas, you could eat it, you could make it into food. I mean, you could make paper out of it. You could do everything with this essential weed. It was just a weed that would grow, and you could do all these things with it for relatively low resource cost. You just needed some dirt and a bit of water, and you were laughing. Now, the technology that went behind bogweed was, it had been repressed since long before the war.